Good morning, everybody. This is Benita Hutchison, your psychic coach, here with your April forecast. I'm doing something new with my cameras, so you're actually going to be able to see the mat, see the dice as I'm working with them. Um, it's certainly an interesting time to be alive, so I'm really looking forward with you to see what the dice show for us for the month of April. So stay tuned as I switch cameras. So here we are, first of all, pulling our card. As you know, I love to work with the Publishing Goblins Oracle dice, and I got in early on the Kickstarter for it, and so it also included a deck. I always like to start by pulling the card that is relevant for this month's reading, and the Heir of Earth is the card that's coming up. So we'll see how that figures into our reading today. I have my handy book here I use. So I'm really excited because the Publishing Goblin is coming out with a new edition of this with a whole new set of die. So I'm going to have a lot more die to work from once that comes out. So I'm already on Patreon getting ready to participate in that. Isn't that a beautiful box? So I'll just bring all the die out. Now, not all of them will necessarily stay on the mat, so if they disappear off the mat, they're not meant to work with us this time. One left the mat. I always like to look at the Chaos dice first, which is showing up here under History. And the face on it, it's kind of hard to make out. So we're going to go to the book. Some of the elements are a little tricky to tell what they are just by looking at them on the dice. It is the Mirrored Raven. So I'll give you a closer view of that one. And so it says it looks at itself in its reflection, simple and unassuming. What is this strange second self and what does it mean? So it waits until you've read the quarter that it landed in, and then it asks you to re-roll the dice in this quarter. What has changed? Is this a new path or important advice? So that's going to be interesting because it's sitting here under History. So we'll include these die that are sitting in the past. This one's kind of bridging the two. So we're just going to work with these ones. So we'll read them, we'll re-roll them, and we'll see what's changed. Interesting that we be looking at the past differently. So I find that kind of fascinating. So we will start off I find it easiest just to go through the book, go through the die as we encounter them. So, and such a beautiful book. So we're looking at the Actions die. And the Actions die is actually sitting right here in the core. So that's interesting. That's going to influence the whole reading because anything in the core is what is actually showing up for the reading itself. So this is known as the Helm. Any of you who, like me, enjoy the Sandman series will really resonate with the Helm. It speaks to rough times ahead, that you will need to weather, or of a current situation that you've been weathering already. For many, simply being called out on weathering difficult situations will recognize what it relates to, but the reading itself can elaborate on what is being weathered and what can be done about it. So a truer die for this particular spread, but couldn't be better, right? Rough times ahead. Here we are. I love how accurate these are. All right, now one that I also like to look for before we get too far ahead of ourselves is the Fate die, because sometimes it will have you move other die before you continue with your reading. So the Fate die is showing up right here under Future, and in that case, I don't believe we move anything. It says, for all intents and purposes, it's the face of losing. It speaks to unwinnable situations or ones you've accepted and moved on from. So it's showing up in the future, basically to say, There's no winning in this situation. And if we look at the world politically right now, there's no winning for anybody. This is going to be hard for all of us. So what it really comes down to is, in this situation where we can't win, what is there to learn from it? We learn more from the challenging situations in our lives than really we ever do from when things are going easy. So far, this is not sounding like a very happy spread. I don't think that's going to come as a surprise to anybody given our current situation. So next we are looking at the Alchemist die, and that is showing up right here. That's the symbol that we're looking at. So it's showing up under present, but also under foundation. Of course, the elements tend to be very foundational, and this is prima materia. It's basically the name for the original state of matter from which God shaped all things. It speaks to the ephemeral nature of pure reality, but more often relates to the raw stuff that is given to us. So it makes sense. It's the foundation. It's the whole idea that, there's an expression, I'm probably paraphrasing here, so feel free to correct me in the comments, but, good men create good times, weak men create bad times create strong men create good times. There's a cycle to things. We've had it really good. It's easy to take that for granted. Now we're facing a situation where we have a lot of growth to do. I like to think our souls chose to be on this path, chose to be here for this deep learning experience. It sure beats saying, why me? Now, the alley die is showing up right here, also under foundation. And what you see here is a hand holding a broken egg. And it's called scavenge. So it's scavenging. It's not just collecting garbage and turning it into treasure. It's finding what is left when things fall, finding what is good in a bad situation, finding hope in the hopeless moments. So it's interesting that here, when the die fall like this, it's a triangle. So it's seeing that, this is a hard situation. Look for the good in it. I like what Fred Rogers used to say, look for the helpers. This kind of situation can bring out the best or the worst in us. That's really up to us what we do in it. The attentions die is showing up under present, and it says neon. And these are the attention seekers. So it's an attention hog. It draws your eye, but offers little in return other than being lovely to behold. So we're seeing a lot of that right now. There's a lot of people demanding our attention. There's politicians who are trying to get elected. There's the one south of the border who seems to very much be an attention hog. So we can see how that is playing out in the present as well. So it's saying this is often something glitzy and glamorous to distract you from understanding what is in the plain light of day. So in other words, look at how we can get distracted by what's going on in the world instead of getting centered, going within and saying, what am I meant to learn from this? So it's interesting. It says, in relation to other die, neon glows its ambiance on dice near it. Know that those dice are still important, necessary even, but that what you've been seeing of them in your life have been almost entirely hidden by the glaring light of the neon. I think a lot of people are feeling like the rug was pulled out from under them, who voted for a politician thinking this is somebody who's going to do good in the world, and it's just devastating everything. So now these things are coming to light. It's becoming obvious what people actually chose. Our awesome die is showing up in the past, and we're going to be re-rolling that, but let's see what it's showing right now. It's change. So it's the element of transformation. So that makes sense that, things from the past are now creating change, and we're seeing this. We're seeing old patterns resurrect themselves, as it were. So the elements die is showing up under fated. So you can see that it's the way it's meant to be seen is, let me grab it properly there, is like smoke rising. That's how I'm looking at it. It's never actually come up in a reading yet. It's fire. So it's considered extreme energy, focus, and drive when needed. Often unconsidered element of fire is that it's stubborn. It's hard to grow without obvious clear aid, but once it begins to grow, it will not move unless forced to. It has a tendency to latch onto its fuel. So it's the will to succeed, to complete things, to accomplish any task. So under fated, it's that spirit that says we will not be defeated, we will not be broken by the current circumstances, we will endure. So remember, when things are tough, you have that inner fire. Bring that out of yourself. Let that be what lights you. What are you passionate about? Where do you want to make a difference? The Goblin die is showing up right here under the present. And it's called manufacturing. So it looks like a little cog. It's the creation process, and it's grimy, oily, efficient disappointment. It's the process of movement and creation of the thing from imagination and impossibility into real form. So it speaks to the movement to making a thing real. In other words, we're now being launched into action. Nobody gets to be complacent in the current situation. Nobody gets to say, well, I'm not affected, I'm good. We're all affected. We're all participating. So it says, in terms of other die around it, what rotates with it and what end do these pieces work towards? Consider dice around it to be in a circle with it, perpetuating one another. So we know it's saying hard times are here. Salvage what you can. What hope can you derive from the situation? Don't get caught up in the glitzy distraction of somebody wanting to distract us from our purpose. Continue to stay to your purpose no matter what in this situation. Don't let yourself be distracted by the things that bring up fear. Trust that inner fire. Work from your core. Keep working with the situation. It really helps to see, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what's supposed to be happening. So I'm just going to work with it. It's a lot better than saying, why me? And throwing ourselves into that state of withdrawal, of depression over the situation. Next, we have the influences die. It's this cute little ghost sitting under fated. And the ghost is a haunting. What it haunts, why it haunts, these things will come to be explained in time. The act of haunting is what matters most to the die. The knowledge that something is not without a shadow burden, an empty see-through weight hangs heavily on the shoulders of whatever this die resides with. So it informs you something is behind something else. And we know there's all kinds of agendas going on here. So this is basically looking at the fact that we can't see everything that's happening under the surface, but it's just realizing this is the time to look at what's within me. What are my hidden agendas? What are the things that I'm trying to make happen? Am I coming through honestly and ethically in everything I do? It's a good time to examine our ethics in this situation. Now, I always love when the kindness die shows up, and it's sitting on within. So it's affecting the core. And in this case, it's called gifted. So you see a hand holding a gift. And it often suggests, when it's at the core of a reading, surrounding a situation wherein you gave someone something. This can be about the repercussions, which can be good, or it may be about the circumstances that existed beyond the gift itself. So it's something that announces itself. It's either something you've graciously gifted to another, or it might be the need for you to do so. So the way I read it in this situation is, what is within you to give? How can we work together in this situation? How can we support each other? What can we do to make a difference? That's, to me, what we're getting from this. And because it's also sitting near future, it's what are the things we're developing and honing within ourselves that can make a difference in the world. They say these sort of situations are the mother of invention. What's creative that's going to come out of you? What's going to make a difference in the world that you're now prompted to discover and work within yourself that you might not have been when things were moving more smoothly in the world? Okay, the longings die has actually disappeared off the mat. So we don't have to worry about that one. It's not going to come up for us today. So now we have the Major's die, and it is showing up under Fated. So you can see it looks like a crossroads, and it's called Path. The hill and roads on the path speak to our decisions that lead us on new passages, knowing that each path we do not take will not always return to us as an option. And it says how the die lands is important, especially if other dice line up. So, we have the ghosted one directly there, your fire, and we're going to come to this one as well. So if other dice line up with its pathways, with one being where the querent is now at the base of the front path, and you might say, because it was sort of sitting like this, it's this situation informing the path. The optional paths are beyond the path above and to the path aside. So we see these are the options. So we know here it's bring the fire. Don't let yourself be snuffed out by the situation. Find your passion, find your fire within you. We will see what the alternative is. It's really interesting to see how those line up. The Mariner's die is showing up under future, and you can see it's a wave, and there's a sun behind it. And it says ocean. So it says, when the water face of the elements die speaks to the nature of the element more broadly, the ocean face speaks to the element more practically. It's, people live on it, fish, swim, boat, and travel on it. It's unpredictable. It's a sea of water and change. It can be beautiful. It can be destructive. It speaks to change, constant, amoral, and without thought. The world around you, the situations you end up in, the people, the opinions. So it's interesting because it's like we have a line here, a losing situation, change that is, it's dispassionate. It's not, the world is not against you. This is the path right now. So it's interesting. It says when it's paired with other phases of change, such as transformation and loss, it shows the ways in which the greater, larger change will affect you more personally. So in other words, it's saying, yes, there's loss that's inevitable in this situation. We don't know yet what this one implies, so this will be intriguing. I love it when they kind of line up in different ways and get us to have to look at what's coming up about this. Now, this one is always a little bit hard to see. I don't know if you guys can make that one out. It's a cocoon, and it's the Metamorphosis die. So this one is called Chrysalis, showing up in the past. It's the moment when no one can see what you're doing, but you know that you're hard at work on yourself, your work, your project. Now, if you've been following me for the past year, since I've been using this, you know there was a lot of internal work last year. It's speaking to that work. Now, because we read these die there in the past, and the Chaos die says to reshuffle them, let's see what we get now. So it's interesting because we'll first go with this one because it's the Caterpillar. Shows up now, and it's saying this is a quiet patience. It's the larval stage, the point where you gather materials for your work, for your transformation. So now draw on the work you've done in the past to sustain you through this. A lot of people go, well, I meditate, I do this, yes, but now it's time to take the meditation and bring it out into the world. What have you been learning? There's too many people who read a book, go to a workshop, and think that changes things. No, it's what you do with what you've learned. Now it's time to take what you're learning, what you've learned in the past, the work you've done, and apply it. How does it apply in the world? That's the hardest thing to do. It's easy to read a book. It's easy to sit in a cave and meditate. It's when you have to step out of it and apply it that the real work is done on our spiritual path. And we will go back to our other dice that we shuffled, and that's the Autumn die, and the face that comes up now is Passing. It's the equivalent of the Tarot Death card. It speaks to something ending, but knowing that from all ends come beginnings. So it's saying, it's just reinforcing what I just said. The time for the deep inner work is over. It's time now to move forward and apply it. This cycle has ended. It's time for action. It's so cool how these die work. I just absolutely love this set. So the Obstacles die interestingly enough, is this beautiful rose showing up in the middle. So we know that this one is saying this is change. Don't take it personally. It's just the change that the world needs right now. We're all affected. We all came here for this journey. There is loss involved. So what does the rose say? Interesting enough, it says peace. So it says peace is a tricky obstacle. Sometimes we get just what we want. We stem the tide of opposition, we stop the conflict, and we get peace. Then what? Sometimes the hardest part is no longer having a clear foe. What do you fight when there's no one left on the other side? I find that very, very interesting, because so often we can say, well, that's happening in another country. Like even being willing to look at the fact that what's happening in the States is hurting the people there as well, not seeing them as the enemy, but realizing choices made by their administration are hurting the whole world. We're all in this together. We might be making choices for our economy that we have to make right now. It doesn't mean we can't have empathy for the folks south of the border that are going through what they're going through and saying, hey, I didn't vote for this. So we gain so much more in terms of our inner peace if we don't see other people as the enemy, if we don't see a situation as the enemy, if we say, hey, on some level, my soul chose to be here to learn something from this. I'm going to try to be grateful for the lesson and for what it's bringing up inside of me that I now get to work with, that I wouldn't have even seen had I not had to do this work. So it's interesting, it says peace will often be accompanied by the dice that talk about the difficulties had with the peace, characterizing the querent's unease with the resolution to the conflict, saying this might not be an easy peace, but in the future it's showing there will be some sort of reconciliation. But it's going to be challenging for all of us. It won't be going back to business as usual. It's changing things going forward. And maybe we need an uneasy peace, so we keep working on ourselves. We don't go, phew, that's over, let's get back to the way things were. The relations die is very interesting because it's right on the border of past and present. And it's showing two figures, and it says apart because the two figures are standing slightly apart from each other. So apart specifically speaks to two people being separated. Well, I think that we can very much look at the current situation as there's been a separation. There's been a betrayal of trust. And we may be feeling this in many ways. We may be feeling it if we have, family and friends that are affected by this that are in a different country, and there's a whole lot of stuff mixed up with that. I think just for fun, because it is bordering on this one, let's give it a shuffle and see if it changes. Well, I like that. So we go from apart to together. So that says to me that if we do the work, if we take what we've learned in the past and we take action now, we can move into this, we're all in this together. We're all struggling through this together, rather than seeing other people as the enemy in this situation. Everybody in this is making the choices they need to make. So some people might say, well, you got to buy Canadian. Other people might go, yeah, but some of the things I need, I can't get in Canada, and they need it for their survival. Maybe it's medication, maybe it's certain foods. We want to be tolerant of everybody's choices. Everybody's doing the best they can with the current situation. So we want to move into non-judgment and compassion around this. The spring die is showing up under the present, and you see a hand throwing leaves up in the air. That's how it appears to me. It's called whimsy. How interesting that we find that in the present. It speaks to the presence of a person, so either yourself or someone you know, in a wild seeming control. It relates to the queer themselves. When it does, it might mean you're the kind of person to take random actions, jump after the slightest interest, or just be hard to read or lock down. It can be joyful and fun. It can be random. In shadow, it leans toward a capricious cruelty, someone in control and power, and enjoying it for all the wrong reasons. Gee, who could that be about? So it is something we're seeing in the present that affects us. We can't plan. We can't get clear direction here. And when you think about it, there's the saying, let what comes come, let what goes go, see what remains. And what that can mean for us is recognizing that we can't control the external. We've never had control of the external. That's an illusion. We can look at, what is this bringing up for me internally? How do I grow from this? How do I take direction from my inner self? And if you have a hard time figuring that out, if you're not fully connected yet with your intuition, this is something I do as a psychic coach. I don't just give you answers. For the people who choose to do the work with me, I teach you how to connect with your intuition so it can guide you on your path. I always say, the more you see me, the less you'll need me, because I'll teach you how to be your own psychic. So wherever you are in the world, if you want to learn how in these trying times to get direction from within you, this is something I can help you with. Okay, so moving from the spring dice to the sweets die, it's right here. So you can see that's the wand. And with wands, it's associated with red and fire, because these tools of magic are focusing and directional tools to control your will and energy. It's through wands we make our intentions something more tangible. What I find very interesting is how closely it's associated with whimsy. In other words, there are things you can't control, but what you can do is place intent. If you've watched my goals videos on YouTube, one of them is goals versus intentions. Like, I might want to get through the grocery store as quick as I can, and I'm shoving people out of the way, and I get there and I get the job done, but what kind of person did I become along the way? Intention is deeper. It goes beyond the everyday of wanting the house and the partner and the job and all that stuff. It's the, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in the world? Nobody has control over that. A really good book on the subject is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. He went through the concentration camps. He had no control over how he was being treated, but he made it a study of, how do people respond? We always have a choice over how we frame things, how we view it, how we use it for our growth. This is very much along these lines. You can place intention for how you're going to grow from this situation, or you can fall victim to it. It's up to you, but every one of you has the power for transformation internally. And a lot of the people whose teachings endure to this day were in situations where they had no power. Christ on the cross is a good example. Somebody who had everything taken from them, put in a situation, branded as a criminal, still had a say over how he responded. Having compassion, asking for forgiveness for his torturers. That's a powerful lesson in how do we take this circumstance and develop compassion and meaning from it, rather than just feeling victimized by it. The summer die is up in inevitable, and you can see it's a fist. So it brings the heat of the fight with it. Sometimes the fist speaks to a literal physical fight that's upcoming. Most often it speaks to figurative battles and struggles. So it's saying, you've done the inner work. That's lovely. Now, this is inevitable. This is the weak men create bad times scenario, and bad times create strong men and women. This is for all of us, whatever gender we are, whatever background we come from, whatever inclination, it's time to fight. It's time to take positive, constructive action to face this situation. None of us gets to pull back here. None of us gets to say, well, I don't have anything to do with this. This is beyond me. We're all affected. It's inevitable. You are going to have to take some kind of action in your life to address the current situation. It's just the way it is, folks. Now, remember here, we have the path of the fire, and then we have this one. This is the winter die. So the mirror is the time for patience, thought, and reflection. So it's an important stopping point in the mental process. Too often it's simple to write things off. What happens when we don't? When we take time to consider the ramifications of not only what we say, but why we say it. When it's showing up with other dice, who holds the mirror? Which die is looking up on itself, and for what purpose? Only the other dice can tell. So in other words, it's saying there are hidden things here, that we haven't been looking at, and that includes patterns inside ourselves. There's the fire, the desire to, get moving and make something happen, but it's also really important to reflect. Am I being reactive or proactive? Is the action I'm taking based on intuition, or is it a reaction out of fear? So that's a really important setup here under Fated. This is where, the rubber hits the road. We really look at our path and how we're walking it and what is influencing it. Oh, that's interesting. The dice that wasn't on the mat is actually the wounds die. That one is off the mat. So it looks like a couple of die left the mat, because I've gotten to everything else. So I find that interesting because it's all about wounds and agonies. So this is saying to me, because it's not on the mat, this situation is much more within us than having to physically go to war. You're basically going into battle with anything within you that's being triggered by the situation and how you respond to it. It's more cerebral than that. We might feel it on a material level, but it's not a physical battle per se. Okay, now the card we have, the Heir of Earth. When the Heir comes up in a reading, she tells you, this is beyond you. She looks at how the world flows. So, in other words, this is a situation beyond your control. It's accepting that. It's accepting there will be loss, there will be struggle. It's taking the inner work and applying it in the world. You can't control this situation. Ultimately, it's realizing we never have control. None of us ever knows when we're going to experience the loss of a home, a job, a partner, a friend. It's always looking at it as, in every moment, the universe is giving me exactly what I need for my spiritual journey. And we are all going through loss here. We are all going through struggle. We're doing it together. And there's something really amazing about that we know all of our neighbors are struggling too. And that should make us feel less isolated in this situation. Oops, I missed one. As I was clearing the die off the mat, I realized the longings die was here all along, under momentum. So this die has to do with the things we don't want to change. We get stubborn. We just put the brakes on and say, no, I don't want to look at this. I don't want to change this. And it's interesting that it shows up next to the one about placing intention. In other words, we're going to struggle here with letting go of the world as we've known it, not trying to get it back to where it was. It's not going to go back to where it was. It's changed. The world going forward is going to look different. The sooner we can accept that and work with it, the more gracefully we can move momentum with these changes. But it is going to challenge us. We're going to want to keep things as they are. But remember, this is in the present here. We can place intention. And as we place that intention to grow from this, it's going to point out where we are intractable, where we don't want to grow. It's going to trigger our core patterns that have fear and anger around change. So again, it comes back to saying whatever's going on is the universe giving me exactly what I need for my spiritual growth. Not always what you want, but always what you need. So there you have it. It's definitely, I think, for everybody who's watching this today, a spread that was kind of inevitable. I find it really interesting how accurate the die are in mapping the current situation and what we're meant to do about it. So even though these are called forecasts and there is some forecasting of a situation, it really is very practical in terms of, here's what you're meant to do with this. The forecast is really about how you can grow this month, as it always is, except now the growth is very much because of what's happening externally. The Buddhist concept is to recognize the external world as an illusion and don't get pulled off your center by circumstances. That doesn't mean sitting in a cave and meditating and letting the world do what it will. It's not a passive thing. It's much more about, okay, this is happening. I agreed to be part of this cosmic play, as it were, and play the role of being in this body at this time. And I'm going to take the action necessary that my intuition guides me to, but I'm not going to attach to outcome because that's getting caught up in the illusion. That's wanting to control it. It's much more about, here's the action I need to take. Here's where I'm called to show compassion. Here's where I'm called to help my fellow human. Here's where I'm called to sacrifice. And here's where I'm called to work on the patterns that want to make me live small and just take care of myself and not think about anybody else. Those patterns that are just about survival and not spiritual growth. We all have an opportunity here to do this work. We're doing it together. And if there's any way I can be of assistance, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to help you find your inner guidance that's going to help you through this situation. Take care, everybody. Let's all do the work together, and I'll see you again next month. Bye for now.